The deep black of uncharted space was disturbed only by the silent glide of the Stellaron. It was a vessel of the galactic concordance, a marvel of advanced engineering. Its lines were smooth. Its technology was the peak of what the known galaxy had to offer. Inside, Captain Xylar of the Xenthian race stood on the bridge, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic displays. His people were logical, calm, and knew their place at the top of the galactic hierarchy. They were explorers, but they were also the gatekeepers of civilization. Status report. Xylar's voice was low and commanding, a series of soft clicks and whistles that the universal translator turned into crisp, clear language for his multi-species crew. "All systems nominal, Captain," replied his first officer, a tall insectoid being named Xthar. "We are approaching the edge of the charted territories. Beyond this point, there is nothing but void." But Xthar was wrong. At that very moment, a new signal appeared on the main screen. It was small, insignificant, and very, very strange. "What is that?" Xylar asked, moving closer to the screen. "A vessel, Captain," Xthar said, his antenna twitching with curiosity. "Primitive design, no energy shields detected, no cloaking technology. It appears to be made of simple metals." The crew on the bridge exchanged looks of amusement. A ship made of metal. How quaint, how ancient. It was like finding a wooden canoe in the middle of a vast ocean. "It is broadcasting a signal," the communications officer, a being of pure energy contained in a humanoid suit, reported. "A repeating sequence of prime numbers. A basic intelligence test." Xylar almost laughed. Prime numbers, the foundation of mathematics. A test they had passed thousands of years ago. "They are trying to tell us they are intelligent. How little they know." The ship, which identified itself as the UNS Odyssey, was small and blocky. It looked like a child's toy compared to the elegant Stellaron. For hours, the galaxy, connected through the Stellaron's public feed, watched and waited. The first contact with a new species was always a monumental event, but this one felt underwhelming. The entire galaxy was ready for a new, exciting chapter, but all they got was a primitive ship sending out a math lesson a child could understand. "Open a channel," Xylar commanded. "Let us welcome these newcomers to the galactic stage. Let's be gentle. We don't want to frighten them." The communications officer sent a standard greeting, a message of peace and welcome, translated into 1,000 languages. They waited for a response. A simple text message, perhaps a grainy image. The response from the Odyssey came 5 minutes later. It was not a message. It was not a picture. It was a wave of energy. For a terrifying second, the crew of the Stellaron thought it was an attack. Alarms blared. The lights flickered. Xthar shouted orders. But then, as quickly as it started, it was over. The alarms went silent. The lights stabilized. The ship was unharmed. "Damage report," Xylar demanded, his calm demeanor finally breaking. "No damage, Captain," the engineering chief reported, his voice filled with confusion. "All systems are green, but our external sensors were completely blinded for 3.14 seconds. The energy wave was perfect. It was a focused pulse of pure energy that did not damage anything. It simply turned off our eyes." A silence fell over the bridge. A silence that was mirrored across thousands of worlds watching the feed. To turn off their most advanced sensors, even for a moment, required a level of energy control that was thought to be impossible. To do it without causing any damage was beyond comprehension. It was like a master swordsman stopping his blade a millimeter from your throat. It was not an attack. It was a message. And the message was clear. We see you, and we can turn you off whenever we want. The galaxy, which had been ready to laugh at the primitive little ship, was suddenly, shockingly, silent. The encounter had just begun, and already humanity had left them speechless. The bridge of the Stellaron was a hub of controlled chaos. Captain Zyler's crew, the best and brightest of the Galactic Concordance, was scrambling to make sense of what had just happened. Their screens, once showing a clear image of the human vessel, were now filled with complex equations and energy readings that made no sense. "I don't understand," the science officer, a silicon-based life form named Unit 734, stated. Its voice was a monotone, but the rapid flickering of its optical sensors betrayed its confusion. "The energy signature of the pulse does not match any known weapon or technology. It was powerful enough to disrupt a small star, yet it was delivered with surgical precision. It was elegant." Zyler stared at the human ship, the Odyssey, which floated silently in the void. His initial feeling of superiority had evaporated, replaced with a deep sense of unease. This was not a primitive species. This was something else entirely. "Perform a deep scan of the vessel," he ordered. "I want to know everything about them, their power source, their crew, their technology. Everything." The Stellaron unleashed its most powerful scanners, waves of energy that could penetrate kilometers of solid rock and analyze the atomic structure of a ship's hull. But the results that came back were even more confusing. "Captain," Cathar reported, his voice laced with disbelief, "the scans are inconclusive. It's like the ship is not entirely there. Our sensors are being redirected, bent around the hull. We can see its shape, but we cannot see inside." This was another impossibility. To actively bend sensor waves required a mastery of gravitational technology that the Concordance had only theorized about. It was the stuff of legends, of ancient, godlike civilizations. Then the Odyssey began to broadcast again. But it was not a message of war or a threat. It was a stream of pure data. At first it appeared to be a complex series of mathematical theorems, formulas that made Unit 734's processors run hot. They were elegant, beautiful proofs of concepts that the Concordance's greatest minds had struggled with for centuries. The humans were not just intelligent, they were masters of the universal language of mathematics. Then the data stream changed. It was no longer math. It was music. Complex harmonies, soaring melodies, rhythmic patterns that seemed to echo the very pulse of the universe. It was a symphony of sound that resonated with every species listening, regardless of their biology. The energy beings on the Stellaron's bridge swayed. The insectoids clicked their mandibles in time with the rhythm, and even the stoic Xylar felt a strange emotion stirring within him. It was a feeling of wonder, of awe. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings were captivated. The initial shock had turned into a collective obsession. Who were these beings? What was this strange, beautiful noise they were creating? Linguists, scientists, artists, and philosophers from every corner of the known universe were glued to their screens, trying to decipher the human language. They soon realized it wasn't a language meant to be translated into words. It was a demonstration. The mathematics showed their intelligence. The music showed their soul. For days, the Odyssey continued its silent display. It sent images of fractals, geometric patterns that repeated infinitely, each more complex and beautiful than the last. It broadcast the value of pi to 1 billion decimal places, a feat of computation that was staggering. It showed them the blueprint of a hydrogen atom, not as a crude diagram, but as a living, breathing piece of art. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. This was not a first contact. It was a performance, a carefully orchestrated reveal of a civilization that was so far beyond them they couldn't even begin to comprehend it. Captain Xylar, humbled and awestruck, knew that his next move would be the most important of his career. He could not treat these beings as inferiors. He could not even treat them as equals. He had to approach them as a student would approach a master. "Prepare a diplomatic drone," he said, his voice soft but firm. "We will approach them with an open hand and an open mind. We need to know who they are." The galaxy held its breath. The silent display was over. Now it was time for the real conversation to begin, and no one knew what to expect. The small diplomatic drone detached from the Stellaron, a tiny silver teardrop against the vastness of space. It moved slowly, deliberately, its every movement designed to convey peace. Its mission was simple: make contact, open a dialogue, and begin to understand the enigma that was the UNS Odyssey. On board the human ship, Captain Ava Rostova watched the drone's approach on her main view screen. Her crew, a small team of scientists and explorers, stood around her, their faces a mixture of excitement and apprehension. For their entire lives, they had dreamed of this moment, the moment humanity would meet another intelligent species. Now that it was here, it was more strange and wonderful than they could have ever imagined. "They're being cautious," said Dr. Eris Thorne, the ship's xenobiologist. "They don't know what to make of us." "Can you blame them?" Ava replied with a small smile. "We broke a few of their laws of physics." The drone came to a halt a safe distance from the Odyssey. A universal translator, a device that could analyze and replicate any language, activated. A soft, synthesized voice echoed in the void, speaking a language of pure mathematics, the one language they now knew the humans would understand. "We are the Galactic Concordance. We come in peace. We wish to understand." Instead of a verbal reply, the Odyssey sent another stream of data. But this was different from the math and the music. This was personal. On the bridge of the Stellaron and on screens across the galaxy, detailed schematics of the human body appeared. Skeletons, muscle structures, circulatory systems, and the impossibly complex network of the human brain were laid bare for all to see. At first, the alien observers were fascinated. The human form was elegant in its own way, a bipedal structure with remarkable dexterity. But then the data began to get more detailed. The information about their homeworld, Earth, began to stream in. And that's when the fascination turned to horror. The data showed a world of crushing gravity, a chaotic atmosphere racked by violent storms, and a sun that bathed the planet in lethal radiation. It was a death world, a class of planets so hostile to life that the Concordance had deemed them uninhabitable. But the humans hadn't just survived there, they had thrived. The biological data revealed why. Their bones were 10 times denser than those of the average galactic species, a necessity to withstand the planet's gravity. Their muscles were bundles of fibrous tissue capable of generating incredible force. Their skin, though it appeared soft, was a self-repairing barrier against a hostile environment. But the most terrifying part was their immune system. The data showed a relentless, hyper-aggressive army of microscopic cells that hunted and destroyed any foreign invader with brutal efficiency. To the aliens, whose sterile worlds had left their immune systems weak and complacent, the human body was a biological war machine. Then came the final piece of the puzzle, their DNA. A double helix of such complexity and resilience that it shocked the galaxy's top geneticists. It was a code that had been forged in the fires of evolution, a testament to billions of years of struggle, adaptation, and survival. It was the DNA of a predator, a survivor, a creature that had clawed its way to the top of a food chain on a planet that tried to kill it at every turn. Across the galaxy, a wave of revulsion and fear spread. The humans were not the elegant, enlightened beings their math and music had suggested. They were monsters, deathworlders, creatures of terrifying strength and resilience, wrapped in a deceptively fragile package. The Zenthian Council, the leaders of the Concordance, were horrified. The Cathar Empire, a species of warriors, were intrigued. The gentle Ploxy, a race of empaths, were overwhelmed by the sheer, raw survival instinct radiating from the human data. Captain Xylar stared at the image of a human skeleton, his four eyes wide with a new, terrifying understanding. He had seen the power of their minds. Now he had seen the power of their bodies, and he was beginning to realize that the Galactic Concordance had made a terrible, terrible mistake by underestimating the small, primitive-looking ship from the uncharted darkness of space. The galaxy was speechless, not with wonder, but with a primal, instinctual fear. The galaxy was still reeling from the biological data. The image of humanity had shifted from that of an enlightened, mysterious species to one of a biologically terrifying force of nature. The silence that had fallen was no longer one of awe, but of fear. What would a species so clearly built for survival and conflict want with the rest of the galaxy? It was into this tense, fearful silence that the Odyssey finally spoke. "This is Captain Eva Westova of the United Nations ship Odyssey." The voice was clear, calm, and unexpectedly gentle. It carried no hint of aggression, no tone of superiority. It was the voice of a reasonable, thoughtful being. Across the galaxy, trillions of listeners leaned closer to their communication devices, hanging on every word. "We understand that the information we have shared may be alarming," Captain Rostova continued. "Our biology is a product of our home. It is a part of who we are, but it is not all that we are. We did not share it to intimidate you, but to help you understand us." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Our initial energy pulse was a demonstration of control, not aggression. It was the quietest way we could knock on your door without causing harm. The mathematics and music were our way of saying hello, of showing you how we think and feel before we spoke." On the bridge of the Stellaron, Captain Xylar listened, his four eyes fixed on the image of the Odyssey. The captain's words were logical, her reasoning sound. It was a diplomatic approach that was both brilliant and humbling. The humans had anticipated their reaction at every step. "We are explorers," Rostova's voice echoed across the stars. "Our purpose is to learn, to discover, to meet others who share this universe. We believe that understanding is the foundation of peace." Then she said something that would once again change the galaxy's perception of her species forever. "To that end, we would like to share one more thing with you. Not the strength of our bodies, or the logic of our minds, but the contents of our hearts." A new data stream began, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was a curated collection of human art, music, literature, and history. They sent the soaring symphonies of Beethoven, music filled with passion, sorrow, and ultimate triumph. They sent the vibrant, chaotic paintings of Van Gogh, who saw the beauty in a starry night and the simple elegance of a sunflower. They sent the timeless plays of Shakespeare, stories of love, betrayal, ambition, and sacrifice that resonated with the core emotions of any sentient being. They showed the galaxy their films, epic tales of heroes and villains, of grand adventures and quiet, personal moments. They shared their poetry, words woven together to create powerful emotions and profound ideas. They even shared their history, the full, unedited story of their species, their brutal wars and their incredible acts of compassion, their failures and their moments of grace. The alien galaxy was overwhelmed. They had technology that could bend space and time, but they had never encountered a force as powerful as human creativity. They were a logical, ordered civilization, but the humans? The humans were a beautiful chaos. They embraced their emotions, their flaws, their contradictions. They created art for the sake of art, music for the sake of feeling. They found meaning not just in logic and reason, but in love, in hope, in the shared experience of a story. For the first time, many alien species understood what a soul was. They saw a species that was both a monster and a poet, a warrior and a peacemaker, a species that had endured unimaginable hardship on their death world, and instead of becoming bitter and cruel, they had learned to create beauty. The fear that had gripped the galaxy began to subside, replaced by a profound and overwhelming sense of wonder. They had seen the human body and were afraid. They had seen the human mind and were impressed. But now they had seen the human heart, and they were truly, utterly speechless.
While most of the galactic concordance was mesmerized by humanity's cultural revelations, not all were convinced. The Cthar Empire, a proud and warlike species of insectoids, saw the human display not as an act of peace, but as a clever deception. To them, the Deathworlder biology was the truth, and the art and music were a distraction. They saw a potential rival, a species whose inherent resilience could threaten their dominance. The Cthar Emperor, broadcasting from his throne world, declared humanity a potential threat that needed to be contained. Without consulting the concordance, he dispatched a warship, the Ravager, to the location of the first contact. Its orders were simple: test the human vessel's capabilities, and if it proved to be a threat, eliminate it. The arrival of the Ravager was an ugly tear in the fabric of the peaceful encounter. The Cthar ship was a monster of sharp angles and menacing weapon ports, a stark contrast to the elegant Stellaron and the simple Odyssey. It dwarfed the human ship, its shadow falling over it like a predator over its prey. A harsh, guttural voice, the Cthar captain's, boomed across the open channels, ignoring the Stellaron completely. Unidentified vessel, you are in violation of Cthar Imperial space. Surrender your vessel and your technology for inspection, or you will be destroyed. Captain Rostova's voice remained calm, but firm. We are in uncharted territory, and we mean you no harm. We are on a mission of peaceful exploration. There is no need for hostility. Your existence is hostility. Deathworlders are a plague. We will cleanse you. Before the Stellaron or the watching galaxy could react, the Ravager fired. A brilliant beam of concentrated plasma, a weapon capable of slicing through a moon, shot across the void, aimed directly at the Odyssey. Across thousands of worlds, beings cried out in horror. They were about to witness the violent end of this fascinating new species. Captain Xylar, on the Stellaron, ordered his ship to raise its shields, a futile gesture to help, but he knew he was too far away. But the Odyssey did not explode. It did not raise a shield. It did something that defied all known principles of physics and warfare. A small section of the ship's simple metallic hull seemed to liquefy. It rippled like the surface of a pond, and a small, perfect sphere of blackness expanded from the ship directly in the path of the plasma beam. The beam did not impact. It was not deflected or absorbed. It was caught. The entire terrifying blast of energy was swallowed by the sphere of warped space-time, held in a silent, perfect prison. The sphere, now glowing with the captured energy of a star, floated gently in front of the human ship. A stunned silence fell across the galaxy. The Cthar captain on the Ravager stared at his screen in disbelief. He had just fired his ship's main cannon, and the tiny human vessel had caught it, like a child catching a ball. Then the Odyssey did something even more astonishing. The sphere of captured energy began to change. Under the precise control of the human ship, the raw, destructive power was reshaped, reformed. With a gentle push, the sphere was sent back towards the Xenowars warship, but it was not an attack. The sphere burst, not in a violent explosion, but in a silent, breathtaking, beautiful shower of light. Millions of harmless, shimmering particles of light rained down upon the Ravager, dancing across its menacing hull, turning the deadly warship into a work of art, a canvas for a celestial light show. The message was unmistakable, and it was delivered with a level of power and grace that was terrifying. It said, "Your greatest weapon is our paintbrush. Your attempt at war is our opportunity for art. We can take your rage and turn it into beauty. Now imagine what we would do if we actually wanted to fight." The Xenowars were, for the first time in their proud, violent history, completely and utterly outmatched. They had been defeated without a single shot being fired in return. The test was over. Humanity had been weighed, measured, and found to be beyond comprehension.
The beautiful, harmless shower of light that had once been a deadly plasma bolt faded away, leaving the Xenowars warship, the Ravager, bathed in a soft afterglow. On its bridge, the Xenowars captain and his crew were frozen, their insectoid minds struggling to process what had just occurred. They had faced empires, crushed rebellions, and were feared throughout their quadrant of the galaxy. But they had never faced an enemy who could turn their fury into an art display. Their warrior instincts screamed at them that this was a trick, a display of power that hid a weakness. But their logic, a trait they rarely used, told them a chilling truth. A species that could so effortlessly manipulate the very fabric of space-time and control raw energy with such precision was not an enemy they could fight. To attack them again would not be war, it would be suicide. Without another word, the Ravager turned. Its powerful engines, designed for conquest and destruction, engaged in a full, panicked retreat. The most feared warship in the Xenowars Empire fled into the darkness, leaving a silence that was heavier and more profound than any before. The rest of the galaxy had watched the entire exchange, their collective consciousness held in a state of suspended disbelief. They had just witnessed a species that was, by all measures, a paradox. They were Deathworlders, biological marvels forged in a crucible of violence, possessing a physical resilience that was the stuff of nightmares. Yet, they acted with a calmness and grace that was humbling. They were intellectual giants, masters of mathematics and the universal laws, capable of a logic so profound it seemed like a new form of thought. Yet their true power lay not in their logic, but in their chaotic, beautiful, and overwhelming creativity. And they possessed a technology that was not just advanced, but seemed to operate on a completely different level of reality. It was a technology that seemed less like science and more like magic. They did not just build ships, they wove space-time itself. The galaxy was left in a state of silent, reverent awe. They had been so sure of their place in the universe, so certain of the limits of possibility. And then, a small, blocky ship had appeared from the unknown and shattered all of their assumptions. Into this profound silence came one final, galaxy-wide message from Captain Ava Rostova of the UNS Odyssey. Her voice was the same as before, calm, gentle, and now filled with an undeniable authority. "We are humanity. We are explorers, not conquerors. We come in peace, and we hope to learn from you. The message was simple, but its meaning was now infinitely deep. It was not a plea, but a statement of fact. It was an invitation. On the bridge of the Stellaron, Captain Xylar looked at the small human ship, no longer seeing a primitive vessel, but the envoy of a civilization that was, in every meaningful way, their superior. He, a captain of the great galactic concordance, felt like a child standing before a wise and ancient elder. He knew what he had to do. He knew what the entire galaxy had to do. With a gesture to his communications officer, Xylar sent a single, humble response back to the Odyssey. It was not a message from a superior to a newcomer. It was a request. This is Captain Xylar of the Stellaron. On behalf of the Galactic Concordance, it would be our greatest honor to open diplomatic relations with humanity. We have much to learn. The galaxy, which had been so quick to judge, so ready to dismiss the strange little ship, was now forced to reconsider everything. A new age had dawned. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not with a bang of conquest, but with a quiet display of unimaginable power and grace. And for the first time, in the face of this incredible, paradoxical species, the galaxy was truly, completely, and utterly speechless. The universe would never be the same.
And so, humanity took its first step into the universe, not with hatred, but with hope. But this is only the beginning of the story. Countless adventures are waiting to be told. If you enjoyed this story and want to join us on humanity's journey into the future, be sure to hit that like button. To stay updated with all our new stories, subscribe to our channel HFY Sci-Fi and click the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. What did you think about this story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback means the world to us. Until the next story, keep watching the stars and keep wondering.